influenced people like Muddy Waters and Little Walter, the great instrumentalists of Chicago blues, because when they got here as a part of the Great Migration, they encountered this huge big band jazz scenes, very sophisticated, playing, and so they, guys like Dave and Louis Myers, who were the Aces, okay, the Aces who backed up Junior Wells, and then later Little Walter, and played on all of Little Walter's classic sides. Those guys were a huge part of bringing jazz chords and structure to Chicago blues, and they needed a drummer, so they literally went to a jazz school, and they found a guy named Freddie Below.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Young Freddie Below, and
awesome.
they took him in and they taught him, how to play deep blues.
Mm-hmm.
But he informed that deep blues with a jazz drummer's sensibility and driving the band with the hi-hat. He was an architect of Chicago blues drums. So then you've got Louis Myers, who's very influenced by really sophisticated guitar players like T-Bone Walker and Robert Jr. Lockwood, and probably listened to Charlie Christian, and listened to what's his name? The great Big Bill Brunzi, and Lonnie Johnson is the one I'm trying to think of. These guys were, and guys like Lonnie Johnson played what Louis Myers used to tell me was straight guitar. They played straight, which means they didn't bend the strings. Okay, so that when and that's how Louis played. Louis played mostly never bent his strings, for the most part. I mean, there were moments when he did, and I'm sure that he could do it quite well. But so this was a thriving jazz scene. Louis Myers and Dave Myers went to the local music store and got lessons, and it was at the music store that they learned more sophisticated chords, and they applied that. And when you listen to Little Walters, it's all pretty obvious when you hear juke. Those are all big band horn chops, and he had them running through his head. He never played juke the same way twice. And then we sit and torture ourselves over 40 years of playing juke the same way he did it for that 3 minutes, 2.5 minutes. And I think that it's a really great lesson to understand what their process was, because you don't need to just listen to harmonica players to learn your chops. You can listen to trumpet players. I think he was really influenced by trumpet players, Little Walter. And there's one note that he hits with a throat vibrato on juke, which sounds exactly like a trumpet. It's uncanny. And then, it was the way that he harnessed the electricity that they were experimenting with to create a real, art form, an electric music art form, and that really was developed in Chicago. It didn't begin in Chicago, and James Cotton used to get all pissed off when people said the amplified music started in Chicago. I said, no, it didn't. It started down south. We were doing that shit in Memphis and in West Helena, Arkansas, and Glendora, Mississippi, and they were already experimenting with that stuff before they got to Chicago. But here, it became a high art form, and it really evolved. So that's the musical appreciation part of this. If you think you're not going to have to blow any more harp, you're wrong.